All right, I hear everybody being admitted into the meeting. Welcome, everybody. My name's John Gilbert. I'm with Facilities Branch, and today you're here for the presentation. Welcome to District Facilities Branch, a basic understanding of who we are and how we work with school districts. Today is a broad overview of what we do. If you're new, I hope you find this informative. If you're a veteran of this, I hope we have some good information for you along the way as well. Just some general housekeeping. You should, if you're not familiar with Teams, and I'm going to make a huge assumption when I say this, at the top of your screen, there should be a Q&A button that you can push and be able to submit questions along the way. Feel free to submit any questions you have, even if it's not relative to the topics at hand today. If you have general facility questions, we won't take specific project-oriented questions today, but if you have things that come up for questions or things, I would challenge you also, things that you would like to hear about for topics for future webinars, please feel free to put that in the Q&A to let us know, hey, I'd like to know more about property or planning or what have you. So with that, I'm going to go through the presentation. I hope everybody can see the screen. I'm told that it is on there. We are live, and I think most everybody's here. So with that, I'm going to begin. Maybe, if my screen will work. Hold on a second. All right, so now, before we begin, also another general housekeeping item. This presentation is a general overview. We're not going to cover details related to statutes, legal actions, or things like that. We're not your attorney or design professional for your specific project, but we can help with compliance questions, general overviews, and in some of these instances, we do provide approvals for like DFP and property, for example. Um, you know, talk to your professionals for specifics on projects, but we're also here to help along the way for your projects. A summary of this presentation, we're going to do a real quick introduction, especially for those of you who are new. You may not know who your project manager is for your district. We're going to introduce ourselves. There's a list on here of who works with what districts. So I think we'll have this presentation on our website, maybe in the PowerPoint, Tanisha, afterwards, that you might be able to gain access to it as well. So if you want to go back and look at this, you'll be able to do that at a later date. So we'll go through introductions real quick. We're going to touch on a section called Statutes and Regulations, Oversight and Assistance. Those are the 5 or 6 regulations that we help oversee for compliance purposes. And we are here to take questions that you have. And in some of those, we do provide approvals, and others, we just simply provide assistance. So, and then we have a quick slide on HB 727. A lot of you may know it as HB 678. All but 8 districts have adopted that. We just have a brief slide on how that impacts some of the things we do in a very broad brushstroke way. So we don't want to forget those particular temporary legal acts. And then at the end, we don't want to spend all of our time in this presenting. We would like some general discussion or Q&A. So any questions you present, we will take those at the end. I have asked Teresa, who I think is helping monitor that, if a good question comes up relative to the topic I'm talking at hand, maybe interrupt and bring that question up. But otherwise, we'll take most questions at the end and have a general discussion towards the end if any topics have a particular interest. So with introductions, Greg, let's start off with you. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Good morning. I'm Greg Dunbar. I'm manager of the District Facilities Branch. I've been with KDE now for 16 years. I originally came as the manager of the construction branch when we were a division. Since that time, we've evolved into a branch, and we do planning, district facility planning. We administer real property transactions, and John will cover all that stuff later. But always here. Have any questions? Let me or any of my staff know. Thank you.
All right. Gary is not here today. He has taken a much needed rest this week. Gary has been here 16 years himself. He is one of the project managers. You'll see on this slide, these are the districts he works personally with. So if you see your district on this list and you're new in your particular role, please feel free to reach out to Gary. At his email, or just give us a call and we'll direct you his way. Let him know that you're new. He'd be happy to give you any kind of basic information on a variety of things we do, as we all would. Marcus?
Good morning. This is my 9th year, I guess, at KDE. Been a lot of changes just in the time I've been here as well. We've seen the rollout of FactPack, of KFix software, going fully digital in that time frame. So in addition to the changes that Greg mentioned earlier, as far as policies that are now administering, we've also seen going fully digital in that time frame as well. That's it.
All right. Of course, myself, I've been here 6 years. Prior to those 6 years, I had 19 or so years in private practice as an architect, primarily doing school work. You know, I know Greg and Marcus also had some experiences in that as well prior to their arrival here at KDE. So we don't just have the experience here at KDE. We do have experiences in private practice, having worked with schools as well. So we can kind of come at it from those angles as well in terms of experience, at least have the understanding, if you will, from that standpoint. And again, on the slide, those are the districts I work with. If you're new, please feel free to give me a shout. Teresa.
Good morning. I'm Teresa Hester. I am the newest project manager here at KDE. I've been here 3 years. In total, with state government, I'd say I probably have around 25 years total. Started in 1997 with CHFS, when it was actually the Cabinet for Families and Children. But I've always worked in facilities management, any agency I've ever worked with. So I bring a lot of experience from just a facilities aspect. But I am fairly new to schools, so it's a different beast, but I'm enjoying it. And you can see all my counties, all my districts right here on the screen. And if you need anything from me, be sure to contact me. I'm always available.
Great. Thanks, Teresa.
Yeah.
And also all these districts on our website, which I'm not going to point out today, there is an updated list for districts and project managers and who's the responsible. If you have a hard time getting to it, give us a call as well at the department, and we'll try to lead you in the right direction. Tanisha.
Hello, everyone. I am Tanisha, your friendly FactPack contact. I've been with KDE for 4 years, and I come from the Department of Revenue. I was there for 15, so I have 19 years total with Kentucky government. If you have any FactPack questions or problems, just reach out to me anytime. Thank you.
All right. And before we get into this, last but not least, I'd like to introduce, and he may be new to some of you, to others, maybe not, depending on your background, Marshall Smith. He's our new, I think you started in March, Marshall. I'll let you introduce yourself, but he's our assistant division director over facilities and other branches as well. So take it away, Marshall.
Hi, everybody. Yes, my name is Marshall Smith. I'm assistant director over the facilities branch. Like John mentioned, I started this job in March of this year, but I've been with KDE since the middle of COVID, January 1st, 21, I think. Previously worked in our audit branch. Saw several names I recognized on the registered list for this webinar. They're finance officers. So you guys may be aware of me, but I just wanted to introduce myself, say hello. Anything at all, be glad to help.
Right. Thanks, Marshall. So the next section, statutes and regulations, oversight and assistance. Basically, we're going to go at a high level here about what regulatory sections we help oversee, assist with, or provide compliance advice, if you will, over things like planning, design and construction, insurance replacement values. We are not your insurance carrier. Don't ask us about insurance details, but there is one detail in that particular regulation that we assist in, and there will be a slide on that. Building assessment, there are some statutory requirements for building assessments, things that I will touch on in that particular presentation. And there's tons of acronyms. We wouldn't be an educational department if we didn't have a ton of acronyms. I'll try to note those along the way, especially if you're not familiar with those. And then last and certainly not least, property. Whether you're getting rid of property or buying property, where the state has a vested interest, we need to know that information, whether you're and we have a lot of oversight and approval process for that as well. There's a couple of them between intergovernmental that we don't, but I'll get into those details when we get to that slide. So let's start off with district facility planning. Let's think of the big picture first. Big picture being, you have to have a facility plan. Every school district, all 171 school districts, are required to have a facility plan. It's usually under review at the local level once every 4 years. It's called a DFP for short, District Facilities Plan. It is under the regulation, and you don't have to remember these numbers, but 702 KAR 4180 is currently active. It is created with a planning manual. There is a wonderful 70, 80 page planning manual. Yes, when it comes to planning, I tell everybody I'm a nerd. I love this stuff. But for most people, if you have a hard time going to sleep, feel free to open that planning manual up and feel free to read it if you have a hard time sleeping at night. But there is a planning manual that is accessed on our website, is incorporated by reference by the regulation, and we use to review and help you through that process. You should be getting checklists from us and go through that process along the way. It is a process that does require local and state approval. We'll have some future presentation on further details about planning, but just understand that it is a regulatory requirement. Understand that you review at the local level, not just your board, but a local planning committee. And your local board and the state, all three approve a plan. And ultimately, that plan, the big deal for that plan is that it provides access to restricted funds. You have to identify the need in order to gain access to certain restricted funds. The two in particular that are noted here in the slide are SFCC, the School Facilities Construction Commission, and FSPK, Facility Support Program of Kentucky. Not going to get into the details of a lot of that, but just understand, if you're going to bond a project or use restricted funds, some of those funds are solely restricted to construction use. A lot of board members like to know that because it's not taking from teacher pay and some of the tax dollars for other things. But this facility plan, when you show the construction, it opens the door up for those restricted funds. It's a big process. It happens once every 4 years. But understand that that's something that you should closely work with us on as you go through that process. We recently came through a big window of plans being approved. Every other year seems to be a big wave of this, and we're starting to hit the slowdown season, but this will pick right back up next year. Another regulation, but you probably don't see this one if you're a school district representative, but you'll hear it from your architects. You may hear it from us as project managers, but there's another regulation called 702 KR 4170. Think of the planning that I just talked about as the big picture. I want to renovate my school and I need to do an addition for 4 standard classrooms. Well, on that plan, you're going to note 4 800 square foot classrooms to add because you need them for whatever reason. 170 is more about the nuts and bolts, into some regards, maybe health and safety. and planning the use of what's in that classroom. Do I need a teacher wardrobe, a teacher station? Is it big enough for 25 students, a 1 teacher to 25 student ratio, the actual area of that space, and all the, the marker boards, tack boards, and natural lighting that has to go into that. That constructability and design comes from this particular regulation. Your design professionals work a lot with this particular section, and we would quote this, especially if we review anything or have questions on basic requirements for a lot of your needs. Again, big over high level here today, but if you have detailed questions about, well, what's in a standard class and things like that, contact your project manager. We'd be happy to kind of run you through that and direct you where this is. I like to think of this as it really bridges the planning to actual design and construction, which is our next slide, which is discussed as 702K or for 160. Now, you'll see in the wonderful small print there, it says guidelines. 160 is technically not in effect as a regulation, but as any regulation is required by some given statute. We have a number of statutes there that kind of discuss requirements in construction. Again, we're not touching on big on big details today, but the construction part of or design and construction, I should say, 160, the intent of it was for years was to have a process to submit things like BG forms, an initial BG1, which most of you are familiar with and aware of, and managing that construction process in communicating with the department, your local school district, your design professionals, construction managers, and the like. There's a whole process involved in that, in reporting and approvals. And most districts approve that at the local level, and I'll touch on that later when we get to 727 slide. But, procurement and how you procure design services, how you procure projects during the construction and bid cycles. There's references to statutes, and some of those are listed here as well. You may have a whole host of questions on that, and we'll take them towards the end. But as I said, this one's not active, but we do use it as a guideline. We do have some districts that have not adopted what's called 678 or 727, and we do still continue to use this as a guideline, and we use it as a guideline for referencing when questions come up related to these things that come our way as well. All right, insurance replacement values. I've gone from the big picture planning, which is a whole regulation and thing that we approve and look at, and big picture to allow to qualify for projects. It has a monetary value to it in that plan. I talked about 160, which has initial BG1s, which sometimes are generated from those plans. Insurance replacement values, like I said, we're not insurance agents. We do not help with a lot of the insurance. There was one detail in the insurance regulation that we help monitor and adjust yearly, and we typically do that in January, February of every year, and that's called the insurance replacement value. This is a value that is established for high schools, middle schools, elementary schools, things that are embedded in the regulation for facility planning. That manual I told you to read in the middle of the night if you have a hard time falling asleep, the basis of those costs per square foot are generated from the insurance replacement values that we update every year. That is an item to sort of get into the details. We have an established baseline cost that was generated, and through that baseline cost, what's called FRED, we inflate that number every year through the Federal Reserve Economic Data Information, and that's updated every January, February. The example given on here is for a high school. That number is a baseline for your insurance when you're looking at those numbers. You do not have to utilize that, but that's your baseline. That is your minimum, if you will, for that. That number is also utilized for facility planning. We use it for additions and new schools. If you're adding to a building, that's the number you generally use. This number is also used for existing building assessments, which I'll get to a little bit later in a couple of slides from now. But that is the baseline cost that we use for a thing called KFIX as well, that's broken into very detailed levels through that process. Building assessments, kind of segueing right into it. I forgot it was the very next slide. There's a statutory requirement called KRS 157.420, Section 9, and it mandates that a standardized evaluation of public school buildings and the physical conditions should happen across the state. Now, this is a statute that is separate from planning. And I always tell people, KDE in their infinite wisdom from a policy-driven standpoint has said, look, districts don't need, because there's a required assessment for planning, there's also a required assessment for this statutory need, which was separate. So because those two parallel worlds, we uniformly use the same assessment and have for a number of years. So if you're new to this process and you hear about assessments, you might be hearing about facility assessments for planning, or you might be hearing about facility assessments for statutory requirements. They can be one and the same. You can choose to do them separate, but I think monetarily speaking, most districts are going to decide to do a 2-for-1, if you will, and say, look, we're going to use this assessment for facility planning, and we allow that, and we utilize that information. This is also something that it generates a report to the General Assembly every biennium, every other year for the budget cycles. The existing conditions are given a score through this process. It's called the Kentucky Facilities Inventory and Classification System, also known as KFIX. So be familiar with that. The software is by a company called Ameresco, for those who are not familiar, and the software is called Asset Planner. If you, all school districts have some access to this. If you have a school district email and you're one of the primary players in facilities, like facility director, finance officer, or superintendent, you should have access to this. If you don't, just give your project manager a call and we'll reach out to, we'll forward you on to Ameresco, and they can help get you put into the system. This is information that you assess at the local level. It's district provided information. We review it and publish it so that it qualifies to be on those reports and in use for facility planning. Property acquisition. This is another regulation that we oversee. This one we do provide approvals for. Again, we provide approvals for planning. We don't provide approvals for design and construction right now. That is a result of 678, 727. I'll talk about a little bit later. But we do still provide and we publish the KFIX information that you provide to make sure it's all filled out completely. Then the property acquisition, we still provide approvals. Whether you're purchasing a 1/4 acre or a sliver for a turning radius or something like that, or to tack on and square off an end, or a whole new property for a whole new school, give your project manager a call. We will go through that process with you because we do have checklists for that and approvals. It essentially, you call us up. In short, you'd have a site inspection. You would request that. Your board would request it. We would review your site, whether virtual or in person. A tentative approval would be given. And during that tentative approval time, just like you'd be buying a house, there's the opportunity to investigate, do the inspections and what have you. There's a whole host of things that you might need to make that approval happen. It's going to be a little bit different for a new school as opposed to like a little 1/2 acre to square off some back end of an existing property. And the use of that property is also important. If you change the use of it, you can also consult us on that. We check to see that it's in alignment with the facility plan. And once you have a complete submittal after a tentative approval, you send all that into us in our FactPack system, and we will give you final approval. We do not, however, handle leasing if you are wanting to be a tenant. That you would have to contact the Office of Legal Services here at KDE for that. And there's some, that's something, I wish we put that email on here now that I think about it, but if somebody could look that up and see if we can put that in some chat note or something like that, or bring that up. If anybody's got any of those questions, maybe we can get that to you if you have that question. Also, property disposal. We, as much as we are required to receive information on when you acquire something, we equally want to get information when you dispose of property. No, we're not your clerk's office, but we do, as a state entity with vested interest with the local districts, need to know when you're purchasing and when you're selling property. As of December 2024, December 10th to be specific, this regulation was updated, and if you had a contingent approval prior to that, we would go through the older method. But if you don't have a contingent approval at your local level to start this process, get with your project manager. We will walk you through that process, and hopefully in the next couple of months, we'll have a training like this webinar that'll get more into the details of what that is. In terms of that process, we use the FactPack system now with the BG1 and a BG5 to try to document that information and to store that information along the way. There's some basic requirements that this slide has. You do need to, I think this is very important to mention. Any property you do sell or easements or what have you, you need to, you have your board declare that it is surplus to educational needs of the district. Basically making some formal statement that you're not going to build on that property or use it for anything other than maybe some intended purpose for utility access or whatever that need may be. You must have appraisals along the way as well, and any kind of sales agreement. Always, you should have your legal counsel review these things prior to closing any property out or disposing of it before you sign that dotted line, if you will. One other note, and we haven't run into this a lot, and I remember going through COVID, a lot of those things, we didn't have a lot come through, but there's a number of them out there nonetheless, that if you do have federally, if you use ESSER funds as the example, it's not the only federal money out there, but if you use federal ESSER funds to purchase property and things like that, there is a process that you have to kind of be mindful of if you decide to sell that property down the line, and even several years from now. And there's a reference about that. Haven't run into that one yet, to be honest, but I'm sure it's a matter of time before somebody does. Also, property, this is a little known regulation that we help administer and monitor. It's called 702KR4:005. This is when you have the intention of having a partnership with another governmental agency for recreational purposes on your property as a school district. You come up with a memorandum of agreement that both sides come up with. And this has to be signed off by the Commissioner of Education in his office. And also, if it's the physical court or you're a city or some other public agency, the Attorney General has to sign off on that side. So get with your project manager. This one's not used very often. I mean, the example I often give is like if a school has a baseball field and you want to have multiple groups to have access to that, some basic memoranda of agreement between the school district and your county or Parks and Rec. You may own the property, but ultimately there has to be some agreement between parties about how that's going to go about. And if it's rented to other parties that the Parks and Rec rent it to, that they also adhere to those requirements, and that always educational regulations must apply along the way. So if you have further questions on that, contact your project manager on a case-by-case basis. To wrap this up, I'm going to touch on 727. A lot of you may know it as 678. It is House Bill 727, which was updated in 2024. Originally, it was an emergency act in 2022, April of 22 to be specific. It was enacted as 678, a continuation of 727. It is good through June 30th of 2027. So what does HB 727 do for districts? Well, I think all but maybe 8 districts have adopted it from a construction standpoint. So if you adopted this as a district, you are taking on the approval process for design and construction at the local level. You're simply reporting BG information to us through the FactPack system. We're not approving it, we're simply processing it. If you're one of the 8 districts or so that have not, then we would still review your plans, and we would use as a guideline the 4160 I mentioned earlier to review your plans and go through that process alongside you, the district, and your design professionals, and maybe your construction manager. So that is one big thing the 727 has done. It's given us temporary suspension for design and construction. We will always provide a support role before 678 and 727. We've always provided that. We will continue to provide that in any of the regulations that I've touched on. We will focus on compliance and pathways of compliance and strategies related to compliance from our perspective. And a lot of things we do, a lot of the things you do for a lot of these things do have legal consequences. So always keep your attorney up to date on issues, especially if they're contentious issues for sure. Streamlining the approval process for property and planning. There is a item in there that notes that we are to respond within 30 business days of a complete submittal. So we really try to work to communicate to getting us a complete submittal for property and planning. Once the submittal is complete, we're on the clock, if you will, and we try to meet that every time. Also expanding extracurricular facility scope. One item that was determined back in 2022, and you can find on the KDE website, I think a memorandum from the department, from facilities branch, on how 678, which is extended through 727, deals with that. If you're unclear, some of that information, I think it was an 8 to 12 page thing, we can steer you in that direction on that information. But extracurricular, it expanded extracurricular facilities to be on a facility plan. For those of you who are not familiar, facility plan has 5 priorities. The first 4 qualify for restricted funds, like the SFCC and FSPK I mentioned. Prior to this temporary legal act, you would not put extracurriculars on there. Now you can put them on any priority. And we don't go to great extent evaluating it, but we will tell you that extracurricular was not defined by the legal act, but in the regulation, it defines it as athletic in nature. And if you utilize some type of extracurricular in the priority 1 through 4, it should be under the governance of something like KHSAA. You know, you wouldn't put community centers, but you could put something related to your high school baseball or softball team, or basketball or football or what have you. The intent is to be able to list it as a priority on a planning as part of the legal act, if you will. Also, and this is out of our purview, but for your information, bonding authority expansion. 727 allows for school districts to issue general obligation bonds, and you can do that at the local level. I'm not a finance wizard, so I'm not going to touch base on that. But I would, if you're a district wanting to inquire more about that, ask your fiscal agent as part of helping you navigate those waters. And there may be others here in the financial branches that could better inform you on that if this is new to you. But other than that, I think that's me wrapping it up. Teresa, I'm going to turn it over to you. Well, before we turn it to questions, Greg, Marcus, Marshall, Tanisha, Teresa, are there any comments, anything that I didn't say at a high level overview of the regulations we've touched on that you want to point out before we take any questions? All right, with that silence, oh, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, I don't have anything, John.
John, the only thing I think of is in the references to the software programs we use, the FactPack and KFix, Those are both the two things I mentioned at the front end of the presentation as well. Those are online programs that the branch uses to receive and to retain documentation for future public release if open records request comes in or anything of that nature. But it's an online program and it hasn't been around too long. Both of them came out in 2017. And I think Tanisha had even extended the offer. If anybody has any questions concerning the FactPack program, reach out to her. You can reach out to any project managers for questions about KFix. And if we can't directly help solve those questions, we will direct it on to Amoresco for their assistance as well.
Yeah, and I would like to add all of these topics that I've touched on today, just to introduce ourselves, for especially for those who are new, and kind of touch on the regulatory requirements and what have you. We hope over the next year to have a webinar not unlike this that goes over each one of those at some point. Of course, we can't do them all at one time. There's a lot of information to digest, but also, are there ones in particular you would like to know more about? Please put that in the chat or Q&A or what have you as a statement. If it's not necessarily a question, it might help inform us as to, hey, I want to do, if a whole lot of people say property and we don't get a lot on DFP because it's not really DFP season right now, then we may need to push our efforts more in one direction than another if collectively as school districts you're seeing more need in one place versus another. We will try to pay attention to that. And with that, Teresa?
Yes. I have a question here from Amber Miner in Mercer County. It's a great question. I've heard this one before, and I think it is a little confusing for folks. She said, if we need to reconvene our LPC and many of those members have moved to other roles within the district or are no longer in the district, can we reappoint new members in those roles? Or should the members who were on the original LPC continue to serve in the capacity they were originally in? And she put an example here. For example, the original elementary school admin rep is now the district facilities director. So do you want to touch on that, John, how the LPC works? Because I know it is very confusing.
It is very confusing. Yes. What Amber's referring to is the local planning committee. For anybody who doesn't know, that's part of the district facilities planning process, the DFP. And the local planning committee is a 10 to 20 member cross section of your community. And as a 4-year, as an LPC member, you're obligated for 4 years. Now, the process starts to draft a new DFP, and that new DFP, it is a minimum of 3 meetings. So it might be 3 months or 6 months. You might meet 3 to 10 times. It just depends on the district and the topics. But once it's done, you're an inactive group for years 2, 3, and 4 typically. But if you make changes or you're in the midst of a new one and you've gone more than the minimum 3 meetings, sometimes people move. Sometimes people retire or can no longer serve in a particular role. There's a variety of reasons why you lose people over that time. If you can still represent that particular group, you still live within the district, you can be that representative for 4 years. However, if you move away, if you've changed roles and you don't feel like you can meaningfully represent that particular group, there is a moment, and I can't cite it, and I don't think you all expect me to cite it right here, right now, but in the planning manual, the LPC committee votes together, and if you have a 2/3 vote of the LPC, simply say, yeah, that person no longer can fulfill that role, then it goes back to the group to which that person represents, and they decide who fills that role. So like, for example, if I'm a teacher, and I'm sorry, Amber, I forgot your specific one, but let's just take the role of it. Oh, go ahead, Teresa.
It was the elementary school admin rep, and she's now, or
Okay.
I say she is now the district facilities director. So
Okay.
they're in a
Yeah.
different role.
So I would tell you, if you're actively meeting during a process and those roles have changed, the LPC may need to meet to determine that are certain people representing appropriately. And if the LPC determines that those things need to change, then it would be by 2/3 vote of the LPC to make those determinations. Now, some people can simply resign as well. I mean, there's nothing that would keep a person from resigning a particular role, and then that group would have to meet that particular, replace that particular person. But um, generally speaking, your LPC would meet, have a 2/3 vote to acknowledge the need to have that particular representation filled. And then it goes back to section 101 of the manual, that one I can cite, and whether it's the SBDM council or if it's the administrators in the district to decide who the administrative person is to replace that person. Oftentimes, I mean, let's be honest, if it's the administrator for an elementary school and it's changed, it's going to be probably, instead of the old principal, the new principal. You might have an assistant principal that might fill that role instead, but it's going to be the administrators for that particular role that will make that decision. But your LPC kind of needs to make an official statement to say, hey, we need to replace this person. And they need to acknowledge those changes. When you do change membership, let us know, because on the front side of that, we make the initial approvals for LPC. So if you start to make membership changes, we need to get our records up to date and be knowledgeable of that as well at the state level. So call your project manager. We can walk you through that for changes. On the flip side of that, if you have somebody, I mean, you have to remember that you have 3 years of inactivity. If somebody is still living within the district and maybe it's a parent whose kid is now in middle school versus in elementary, if the LPC determines that that person can still represent, maybe they still represent those last year or two. So keep that in mind. I mean, there's a lot of local decisions based on that, and the regulation gives you some framework to make those decisions on. Next.
All right. Next question from Cassandra Ratliff. Have you done a webinar for FactPack before, or do you have one being scheduled at a future date?
The short answer is we've not done a webinar for FactPack. No. There is a basic, and it's dated, manual in FactPack that can give you some basics if you're just starting out. Of course, you can always contact Tanisha on the basics starting out. We do plan to do something in hopefully the near future on a webinar on one of these monthly meetings that will go over the logistics of FactPack. And we're still working on that. I don't have a final date on that yet. But we are working on that. Tanisha, do you want to add anything to that?
Yes. Hi. We are working on the documentation for FactPack, so that I plan that one to be in the next month or two.
Mm-hmm. And during that one, I would suspect, while we do have a little bit of dated information, we will go through FactPack in that, but we'll also show you resources that you can gain access to along the way that can give you a start, but we hope to continually update along the way as well.
And I'll add to that, if you're ever having issues with uploading documents or just understanding the linear process in FactPack, Tanisha is a phenomenal resource, and your project managers are always willing to do a Teams meeting with you and walk through it step by step. We're always here for you on that. Let's see. I think we've got another question, John. Okay, Chad. Let's see. Is KDE willing to consider updating the FactPack process / system and accept electronic signature examples? Dotloop and DocuSign. I've said the same thing, Chad. Instead of printing copies for hard signatures. I think the question there is, do we foresee DocuSign or something, a digital signature system in the future?
Chad, yeah, you and I have touched on that before, Chad. There's several different levels on that one that I think I can kind of start to address. I don't I would ask at the local level, first and foremost, I think at the local level, you have to make the determinations if that's acceptable. If the local level is accepting of it, then that's going to be your starting point. Then the next level is, okay, what signatures do I need for what? So if it's from a construction standpoint, if you're a 678, 727 district, you keep all those records at the local level. 160 isn't technically in effect, but is used as a guideline. Embedded into the FactPack system, I don't know, and I can't speak to the capabilities of that being part of the software in terms of changing for something like that. But as a PDF with maybe digital signatures, I mean, if anybody else wants to chime in, Greg or Marcus or Teresa, I've seen things digitally signed. I don't know that it's a
Yeah, I have too.
problem unless there's some statute I'm not aware of that
Yeah.
explicitly doesn't
I
allow
don't-
it. I don't know that you couldn't do
No,
that.
I don't think that's an issue. I know I've worked with agencies that have used DocuSign before. I
I've
think
seen a lot of that with purchase
yeah.
orders in particular.
think that the question is, do we see incorporating that into the FactPack system? I don't know that SharePoint would support that, and FactPack is a SharePoint based
Yeah.
program.
Yeah, we may have to
Um,
defer to
that-
that
yeah, that would
support
be more
branch
of a-
for that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So
Yes.
as a like a PDF file that has a digital signature, I
Right.
think what we're saying is that's likely okay. Contact your attorney and local policies and how you do that.
Yeah.
If you're asking the question about how FactPack has that embedded into its system to where you can kind of generate that from that standpoint,
FactPacks.
we don't have a final answer, but it's unlikely. And but we would be willing to explore that, to ask our tech crews in terms of enhancements in the future and things like that. I think unlikely,
John,
but we should look into it.
yeah, I'll
Marcus?
weigh in on this too. So for probably at least 15 years, I have personally, and since I've been at KDE, I've seen electronic signatures be utilized on all forms of documentation in
Yep.
construction, including those which are KDE documents. So it really just depends on the user, the policies at the local district, and the contractual agreements themselves, whether or not electronic signatures will be accepted. If we receive them in FactPack as an electronic signature, the example John gave was Adobe, I don't think that it's ever been denied. But
I
mean,
I
the
haven't
undercurrent
myself
to
either.
that, yeah, I've seen them and I've processed them. They're just rare. So, we won't weigh in on the authenticity of an electronic signature. That's really not our role in that process. That's what John was referring to. But I
Yeah.
would also add, the school policies for, data control, safety and security and all that. We don't administer those either. I don't foresee, from my experience, I don't foresee a third-party program being integrated into FactPack. We wouldn't be able to do that because, we don't write the software, but we do have a branch inside of KDE that could probably weigh in a little more conclusively as to the ability to add a third-party document verification.
Yeah.
But
Good point,
in all
Marcus.
cases, regardless who or what method of signing, if it requires a board approval, you still got to go through those motions, whether it's an electronic signature or a hand signature.
And I will say that I just confirmed that this is something that can be implemented. It just
Yeah.
is a programming.
So
Yeah.
that sort of answers your question, Chad. It's a possibility. It's not embedded into our system, and we'll have to explore it further. But you also need to be mindful of the local requirements. I know we touched on this before, Chad.
My request would be drop that into your FactPack support and formally submit it through Tanisha. That's what
That's a good
happens
point.
when that comes in, and
Chad
then she can
has-
run it. She can run it up to the software
Chad-
programmers.
Chad has
Chad.
elaborated here. He said, I am referring to the BG documents we are required to have signed and uploaded into FactPack.
Yes.
Currently, they must print them from FactPack, get signatures from board members and re-upload, and often wait until the next board meeting for signatures and approval.
Yeah.
So,
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Chad, to help us help you and to maybe help all districts, you know how to get into FactPack and do a FactPack support request. If we will do that as well, but we will float that through Tanisha, which will go to our tech branch, our data branch here, and see what feasibility about having that happen. I don't think it's going to be an overnight thing, but we'll certainly investigate it and get back to you, and maybe in a future webinar update any kind of progress that may or may not be able to happen or not. Next question.
that is all I have for now. Yeah.
Come on, there's got to be a tough question out there somewhere.
I know. I keep waiting for something more. Come on, guys, this is your time.
All right. Well, we'll give you
Okay.
all 3 or 4 minutes here. Is there anything, last comments that anybody'd like to make while we give the crowd some time to maybe ask some additional questions? All right, crickets. All right. Well, we will hang out here for another couple of minutes. Oh, go ahead, Teresa. It looks like you're going to say something.
Oh no, I'm always getting ready to talk. I mean, we've had that discussion, but no, there's nothing coming through. Just
All right.
just always ready to talk, John.
All right. Well, our hour is about up anyway. We'll give them another 60 seconds here. If nobody can think of a question, we will call this one. Appreciate everybody's time. I think we had a pretty good sign in. Yeah, I'll be open and honest here. This is a pretty successful sign in relative to some other recent trainings and things we've had in the past year. So appreciate you showing up. We will try to do this monthly, and we will be more specific in the future about other topics as we go along the way. Again, if you have some would like to see this topic over another topic, or would like more training on a specific thing, please put that into the Q&A or comments. It might help gear what we prioritize. We might think one thing, but if the crowd thinks another, then we might start pushing another way. And with that, any other outstanding comments before we close here?
Nope.
John, I'll just add that we'll be sending out evaluation shortly to people who are registered.
All right, good. You'll be getting an evaluation soon. And with that, no more questions. We're glad you were here today. Look for upcoming schedules and invites in the upcoming months, and we will see you then. Thanks.